about you. I'd like to know your point of view.
Hi everyone, welcome to Evening TV. I'm Evening Ransom. And it's been a little while since I've done one of these episodes where I look at the media portrayals of narcissistic characters, either fictional or not. And so I just couldn't resist the big Netflix docuseries on Joe Exotic and talking about what do we see to do with narcissism in this series. So that's what we're talking about today in this episode of Evening TV.
I'd like to know your...
This is just a train wreck. This is just a train wreck of characters. It's a true story. Basically, it's about people that are into big cats. And apparently, this was something I did not know, apparently there are more big cats in captivity in the United States than exist in the wild all around the world. So that was shocking in and of itself to me. I was not super excited about watching this because I thought it was going to be about animal cruelty and all of that, and that is really sort of an undertone of it. It's not really about that so much at all. There is some of that, of course, but it's not really so much about that as it is focusing on these crazy, nutty characters. The whole time I kept looking for someone I could root for, looking for someone I really liked, and there wasn't anyone. These are true people, these are real people, and they're all just despicable. One's more despicable than the next. And all of them are operating in total self-interest and complete lack of empathy for these animals, for sure. What you see is that greed, and not only greed, but wanting to they're using these animals as a way to get self-esteem and as a way to get prestige and as a way to it gives them, they're like getting boyfriends and girlfriends and things over it. So let me just kind of go through some of these characters. This guy's named himself Joe Exotic. He was an abused kid. He's in Oklahoma. Real unhappy, life, it sounds like. Being gay in Oklahoma is not easy, apparently. So, he definitely has an abuse history, but at some point, it seemed like earlier on, he did sort of have a real affection for these animals. And whether or not that's true, I can't really know for sure, but at some point, it definitely changed into something that was not as wholesome at all as that. It seems like he has a nemesis. There's Joe Exotic. His nemesis is this woman, Carol Baskin, who's in Florida, and she has something that she calls the Big Cat Rescue, which she claims is a sanctuary or something for the big cats, where she's supposedly rescuing them. He has what's basically a private zoo, but in essence, they're doing the same thing, pretty much. They were both earning, making money off of showing these big cats. She was working mostly with volunteers and charging money to see the cats and all that stuff, and not really keeping them in very great conditions at all, it didn't appear to me. Then there's another guy. There's another guy called Doc Antle, who I believe he's in South Carolina or something like that. So there's basically the 3 states that this is all evolving in, and he has what basically amounts to more or less a cult. He has these women there that he brings in. He's given himself sort of an Indian name. He's one of those people that's giving himself some kind of crazy Indian name, which I'm not even going to try and pronounce. He has a lot of famous people that he is associated with because he used to go on the Jay Leno show and all this kind of stuff, and he has celebrities that he's brought out and seen his animals. But he also has these women and that he brings there, and they're his employees. They're quite young, and they have sort of a sexual relationship with him, and they're underpaid, and there's all this kind of crazy stuff. And there's this woman, she talks about having been there, and the conditions were so bad and stuff, and she was forced to get like a breast implants and all this kind of, forced to call him Lord. Apparently they're forced to call him Lord. Joe, back over there in Oklahoma, he made up the name Joe Exotic. Loved Joe Exotic. His real name was something like but yeah, he took on Joe Exotic, and but he has some funny things. Like he has these songs where he's like, he has these music videos where he's singing country music and stuff, but it's not even him singing. You know, they're songs he wrote. I'm assuming the songs he wrote, but it's not even him singing. The songs were actually sung by two guys from Washington State, where I'm from. Actually, it's some of this criteria or whatever for narcissists. One of the things is, you know, taking credit that you don't really deserve, or, you know, taking credit for other people's work. Well, acting like he's singing, you know, but it's not his voice. He's trying to make it appear that it is him. And he had some kind of a podcast that he was at. He would very overtly on this show, and he did it like nightly. He would talk about his nemesis, this woman Carol Baskin, and he would talk about how he was going to kill her, and he would actually even act out like shooting her and hanging her and stuff like that on this show that he did. And it was some kind of, you know, small little broadcast thing. He wanted to be a star. He wanted to be famous. He really, really wanted to be famous. And he had all these little small time things he was doing to try and get to be famous. There was some kind of things that were a little bit sad about him, because there was this little piece of it where you could see there was something good about him in there somewhere, but it had gotten really buried by greed and by hurt. You know, just, you know, being hurt in the world, and just by, you know, just being a dysfunctional person. Because, you know, like one thing he did do is he did a big Thanksgiving thing where he fed all these, you know, for free. He fed all these people, and this person that worked for him, Kelsey Saff, she went by Saff, and actually identifies as a man, so or she in the documentary, but in the after things I've seen afterwards, Saff identifies as a man. Everyone had problems with Joe. Joe was, you know, he was, especially towards the end, he was yelling at someone all the time, and he was not actually very good to the animals, and, you know, lots of things were going wrong with Joe. But he says that there was some good about him too, that he wasn't just as solidly bad as portrayed in the documentary. Tragic things that happened in the whole thing was that he had this young guy there named Travis playing around with a gun, and he always would pull this gun on this other guy that was in the thing, who was there to work with Joe, who was trying to run for governor, so he was going to be his campaign manager. So this guy came on there as his campaign manager, and Travis would always like pull guns on him, you know. And he'd be like, "Hey man, don't point guns at me." And Travis was like, "This one you have to have a clip in it, you know. This one doesn't have, it doesn't, you know, there's no bullets in it. It needs to have a clip in it." And he goes, "See," and he, you know, basically puts it up to his head, and there must have been a bullet in the chamber, and he shot himself, killed himself, right in front of this guy, and it was actually caught on the camera. You don't see it, but you see the guy's reaction. You know, you see the flash of the gun, and you see the guy's reaction. And Joe has these strange reactions. Two of the most tragic things that happened, that was one. Another one that happens is this person, Saff, gets his arm bit off, gets his arm basically torn off by a tiger. Another time when he's acting like he's somebody that he's not, you see Joe has on an EMT's jacket. Like, I don't know if he like sees this person gets his arm bit off, and goes and runs and puts on his jacket. I don't know, but he has his jacket on. He was basically acting like he was an EMT. And you see him in the office going, "I'm never going to financially recover from this." You know, so he was concerned about his finances, you know. And then with this boyfriend that kills himself, he was distraught over that, but they cut to this funeral that they had, and it was just the most inappropriate, cringy thing I'd ever seen. Where right in front of his mother, he's talking about sex, and it was just, you know, really, really awful. And then he breaks into singing, you know, so it's just showboating, you know, just like this showboating. And then you know, he was definitely what you would call an overt narcissist. Most of them in this thing were. I wouldn't say, if there's anyone that was more covert, it was this guy, Jeff Lowe. But he's not that covert either. He comes in, and he comes in under the premise when Joe's into some financial problems because he gets sued, because he's dumb. He gets sued by Carol Baskin, who's not so dumb. Actually, she might be the most covert. because lots of circumstantial evidence is pointing in the direction that it looks like she killed her husband and fed him to the tiger. It's really bad for her. It looks like a lot of the evidence looks really bad. Not everything looks as bad as they would have you think in the documentary. I mean, there were some things that aren't as bad as they looked at the documentary, but still it seems pretty bad. And also, she was claiming to be this, Mother Teresa of the tiger world, yet doing nothing really any better than anybody else. They were all using these animals for prestige, for money. They wanted to literally be the Tiger King. They wanted to be like the one, it was an ego trip. It was an ego trip for them. Actually, the guy that owns the Joe's Enterprise, owns it now, is this guy Jeff Lowe, who basically steals it from him. He basically comes and steals it from him and uses Joe's ego and uses his stupidity against him. Narcissists are very susceptible to being manipulated. He was able to get Joe to basically sabotage himself by plotting to kill Carol, and he just egged him along and then kind of more or less set him up. It isn't a case of entrapment, because he did do it. I mean, he is guilty of doing it. He did. This guy Jeff did set him all up, didn't entrap him. It's not an entrapment case, and there's tons and tons of evidence to show that he wanted to kill her. He had done lots of things about talking about killing her, and there was just tons and tons of evidence with all kinds of witnesses that he'd done this. And one of the things for an entrapment case you have to prove is that put this in this person's head that it wasn't there already. Well, you clearly couldn't do that in this case. So, but this guy, Jeff Lowe, who owns it now, is just as sleazy and slithery and slimy as anybody could be. They're all just these characters that are, one's just even worse than the next. They're just really awful people. Joe is now in prison. He also has the COVID virus. He's in prison with the COVID virus. But he's got all these cases. He's got an appeals case. He's got a entrapment case. He's got a defamation case. He's got all these cases out that he's, probably not going to win. It doesn't look like. It doesn't sound like. But, he got a pretty heavy sentence, a 22-year sentence, and he was, I think, 56 years old or something going in. So it was probably a pretty heavy sentence. It seems like a bit much. And the sentence was for, he got a couple of things. One was the conspiracy to commit murder. He did actually give someone some money. Who was also in the thing. He was also a scary guy, supposed hitman. He was also a friend of Lowe, so Lowe kind of set them up together. So that's why I'm saying Lowe is definitely playing a big part in how Joe went down. Conspiracy to commit murder of Carol Baskin, and then also for killing the big cats. They found 5 big cat skulls that he had killed. It happens basically is with these cats is that they're, very costly they eat a ton, and they're dangerous besides. So very costly to keep alive and keep around. And really, they're only profitable when they're little tiny kittens. They breed them so that they can have these little kittens and bring them around and have people pet them and all that kind of stuff, and they're adorable. But then after that, they're kind of just a liability. Well, this documentary is about these crazy, nutty people who are all finger pointing at each other, and they're all doing crappy stuff. None of them really has any solid value system, no real kindness, no real honesty, authentic truth. They're all phonies. They're all unscrupulous and greedy and cruel to these animals. In general, this is just a perfect example of when you have people who have a lot of ego, each one trying to win over the top of the others. None of them having adequate empathy, none of them having really any care and concern for other people. They're all users. They all use everybody. And you can see this. Doc Antles uses these women. Joe uses these young guys. Carol Baskin used her husbands. and uses volunteers, and you know, they all look at everyone for what they can get out of it. Every single person in it is a schemer and a scammer and trying to see what they can get out of it. And the loser of the whole thing, of course, is the animals. That's who loses in the whole thing. That's the underlying undercurrent of the whole thing. But people get really damaged and hurt by this group of just seedy, ugly people. Just see the overt narcissism that's going on amongst these people. And so it was quite a display. In my mind, other people were looking at it for other things and seeing other different things, but since this is sort of the perspective I come from, that's what I could see. Is I could just see that these people were just, they lacked empathy, they lacked decency, that kindness. They weren't thinking of anybody else's needs besides their own, and they were all just using these poor animals, and of course the animals were what got harmed. If you haven't already seen it, it's certainly entertaining. It's worth looking at, and but you won't find any characters that you're going to be, your heart's going to go out to. They're a group of really nutty, awful people. But it's a good display of narcissism. If you would like, you need an example of that, it's clearly that. So anyway, thanks for listening, you guys. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and I will talk with y'all real soon. Okay, bye-bye.